Good day, everybody. Happy holiday. I hope you are safe and well. If you're used to seeing my normal backdrop, this is not it. My office is probably 110 degrees here today in Carmel Valley. So I decided to, head for the master bedroom. It's cozier anyway. So today we're diving into an amazing topic, and I'm going to bring up what we're going to cover today. You're going to want to grab a notepad, sheet of paper, pen, and type in your questions. I'm going to be looking at the comment bar the whole time through. So we're going to talk about what really wrecks relationships. It's rarely the lack of love that ends a relationship. We're going to dive into what does wreck relationships. We're also going to talk about some of the most common mistakes that sabotage relationships and talk about your ROS, your relationship operating system, a little bit. We're going to look at the painful patterns that block open and honest communication and also block intimacy. And lastly, we're going to talk about how to communicate so that both of you feel heard, understood, and valued. And I would love to know where you are calling in from today, from what part of the world, what time zone are you in? Because I know we get people from Brazil, from England, from all around the world, and I totally appreciate it. So we're going to dive in, and it's going to be an interesting conversation here. I definitely want to talk to you a tiny bit or a lot about this book. I highly recommend this book. I have been coaching couples for almost 30 years now. Studied with Tony Robbins. I've written my own best-selling book, Argue Less, Love More. And this is like a huge eye-opener, even for me in my own habits, patterns, and beliefs. It's like, oh my God, how come I didn't know about this earlier? And Hold Me Tight is by Dr. Sue Johnson, and it's all about the attachment theory. And we're going to look at the attachment theory because here's what destroys relationships. When relationships are going good, you don't need a lot of tips and tools and techniques. It's easy. It's easy. But when things turn to crap, you better have some tools that are at their best when you're at your worst. So I'm going to go through this today and give you some ideas of what to do. And hello, Elizabeth. So yeah, where in the world are people checking in from? So here we go. By the way, I was once told if you don't know how to spell a word in at least 2 or 3 different ways, you're not being flexible. So you'll see flexible spelling. That's my way of saying I'm basically dyslexic and grammatically impaired. So anyway, all relationships, triggers happen. You get triggered. They look at you a certain way. They say a certain thing, a tone of voice, a certain pattern. And actually, it'd be fun to type in, what are some of your top triggers? Like if my partner gives me advice before giving me empathy, oh, wow, from the Netherlands. If my partner gives me advice before giving me empathy, that's triggering to me. And I make up a story that they really don't care about me. So I wish I had a game show called What's Your Trigger? All right. So when we get triggered, our behaviors either escalate the situation and make it worse or de-escalate it and make it better. So what we want to do is look at how do you stop doing damage and how do you have your partner and you both feel heard, understood, and valued. And I'm going to take something that's incredibly complex, relationships, and the attachment theory. And I'm going to show you a slide in a second. You can take a screen capture of this slide or come back to it. But these are my notes from going through the book. Now, I'm going to simplify it a lot, but I want you to get the big picture. Relationships are complex. Here's what we're dealing with. This is the dance that goes on. Somebody gets triggered. They make up a meaning about it. The dance begins. It brings up old wounds. And then the question is, how do we engage? Do we engage as enemies or allies? And the big question, and I'm going to slow it down and go back through this. So these, for those of you who are like overwhelmed right now, that is totally normal. Don't worry about it. I'm going to come back and slow it down. But when we engage in this dance, the dance is when we get triggered. When we engage in the dance, where do we go? Do we attack and pursue? Do we get vulnerable and open up? Do we get quiet and shut down? Or do we avoid and retreat? 4 different areas. We're going to talk about this today. And what ends, we have a response, and then what ends the whole upset? Do we end as allies or do we end as enemies? Does our response, if our partner gets triggered, does our response make the situation better or worse? All right. Thank you for sticking with me through that. Here we go. I'm going to simplify everything and make it a little easier to address. If you think about a 5-6-story building, at the top, up here, you have your penthouse. It has views. And in your penthouse, you can see the whole world out there, lots of resources, lots of options, lots of possibilities. Down here in the basement, it is scary. And what do you have in the basement? You have 3 options. You know what those 3 options are? Fight, flight. Whoops, that's supposed to be freeze. Okay, so the whole idea here is, even if I have been trained for years, like I said, I've been coaching couples for over 25 years. I've been studying this for probably almost 35 years or more. I was studied with some of the best. Tony Robbins was my boss, my mentor. I've studied Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, a lot of different things. And you know what? When I get triggered, if I end up down here in the basement, you know how many options I have? 3 options, just like everybody else. Fight, flight, freeze. The whole idea here in this, and let me see if I can make it stand out a little better. The whole idea here is to not end up in the basement with your partner. Is that making sense? I just want to be clear about that. The idea here is, how do we avoid making those relationship mistakes, those painful patterns that end up putting us way down here in the scary ass relationship basement where we only have those 3 options: fight, flight, freeze. So when we're up here, we can communicate this, by the way, up here. This is when we're communicating from our heart. Here's when we're in the middle, we're communicating from our head. And down here, when we're communicating from our, and this, our hurt. Okay. So how is everybody doing out there? Elizabeth saying, I am taking responsibility for my own feelings and what I have allowed. This whole thing of communication and feelings is an amazing field. I want to acknowledge everybody who's even on this call and diving into this and slow down. I'm going to take that banner off. By the way, that banner is there for people who want more help. If you want to have a breakthrough session with me, I do a 15-minute complimentary session to find out whether or not where you are, where you are, where you want to go, what's in the way, and would working together be helpful? All right, here we go. 3 main ways that we communicate when we're triggered. I found this out the hard way. So our nervous system, when we go into our trauma response, and if you grew up in a household where there was lots of trauma and drama, like mine, you have a conditioned response. It's almost automatic. In fact, it is automatic unless you go in there and rewire it. My automatic response is when I get triggered, my tendency is to go to one of 2 places. This is my dominant place, and I have worked on it a lot since first place, I didn't even know I was doing it. Once I discovered I was doing it, then I've started to build that muscle. But collapsed is what I did as a child because it was safe. In my household, my older brother, anytime that I stood up to him or stood up for myself or put up a boundary, he did everything he could physically, emotionally, psychologically to pummel me until I gave up, until I quit, until I collapsed. And that was my safety zone. So what we want to do is look at what was your safety zone growing up and what is it now? The problem is now I'm a 230 pound, 6'3" guy who's over 60 years old, and I still occasionally collapse, and it sucks. It doesn't get me what I want, but it's an automatic response when triggered. The other automatic response is to get combative. Now, do either of these help your relationship? Do either of these bring you closer when you collapse with your partner or when you get combative with your partner? Both of these take you further down into the basement. They, I'm going to call them below the line. Any communication below the line makes your relationship worse. Any communication above the line brings you together and connects you. So above the line, the third way is to be courageous. Courageous come from le coeur, from the French word, to come from the heart. And when we come from the heart, the key is about connection. Now let me just see. Yeah, I'm just going to add a page here, see how good I do. Okay. When we're communicating collapsed, combative, courageous. Those are 3 pieces. I'm trying to make sure that I keep them simple, and there's another 3 pieces. Can you handle another 3 pieces? So nod your head yes if you can. Yeah, I can see you out there in Facebook land. Thank you for sticking with me. All right, so here are the 3 pieces or 3 places we communicate from and we listen from. The first one, our head. When we're communicating from our head, what's critical? Facts. Who did what? We want to solve. We want solutions. We want to solve problems. We want to fix things. The other thing is we want to be right. Now, this tends to be a more masculine trait of communication. We want the facts. We want to know who did what, when, where, how. We want to create a solution. We want to solve the problems. We want to fix things. When we're in our head, vulnerability, is weakness. We don't like being vulnerable. We don't like not knowing something. We don't like being lost. We don't even like looking like we're lost. Think about guys and asking for direction, or the masculine energy asking for direction. We're afraid of asking direction because then people will know that we're lost, even though everybody already knows that we're lost. So when we're in our head, vulnerability is weakness. When we're in, so the three areas we communicate: head, heart, or hurt. When we're in our heart, what we care about there is connection. We don't care about facts. We care about connection. We care about emotions, feelings. And in this case, vulnerability is SP. Vulnerability in this case is a superpower. So you think about it, a lot of times the masculine and the feminine speak from two different places. And I'm saying it this way rather than men and women. I have a masculine side of me. I have a feminine side. When I'm in my feminine side, coming from my heart, emotions are key. When I'm in my masculine side, I am, by the way, I'm an ex-commercial fisherman. I spent 18 years in Alaska commercial fishing. When I was commercial fishing, we didn't talk a lot about our feelings. We worked regularly 18, 20-hour days. Who cares how you feel? We didn't. Now, when I got home and was talking to my ex-wife and she was in feelings and I was in my head, we didn't communicate well. And so if you want to communicate with your partner, either speak from the same place they are. So if they're speaking about facts, you might want to listen for the facts, or listen and speak from the facts. If they're coming from their heart, listen for their feelings and communicate feelings. If they're coming from their hurt is about, the whole thing here is protection, safety. And again, watch what happens. When you're worried about your protection and safety, you're trying to figure out if someone is your ally or your enemy. And if they're your enemy, again, vulnerability is weakness. So if you think about it, the human is almost designed to screw up relationships. If we're in our head, vulnerability is weakness. If we're in our hurt, vulnerability is weakness. And if we want to create a great relationship and connect from our heart, vulnerability is a superpower. So if you think about it, what do you want in your relationship? Do you want somebody who's vulnerable, open, honest, intimacy? Because intimacy and vulnerability are almost the same thing. And vulnerability takes incredible, incredible courage. So, what I'd like to hear is maybe you could type in, what are you getting from this talk? And how are you going to apply it? Because if you think about it, if somebody is in their hurt, what do they have access to? They're down in the basement. They have the fight, flight, freeze. They do not have access to a large vocabulary. Thank you, Arnold. This is, if you want to get them back to their resources, back to their vocabulary, back to being able to talk, you've got to bring them back up into their heart to feel safe. And there's another thing, I'm going to just add one more page here. This is something that I learned, and I haven't seen too much about this, but here is the difference between the masculine, and I think this is actually men and women. So this is my idea of right brain, left brain. So switch it around. This is the right, this is the left. So one side of our brain has access to words, one side has access to feelings. The feminine, well, I'll tell you the masculine first. The masculine, when they looked at the brains, doing brain research, men tend to just have a small little highway, like, well, not a highway, a little dirt road that goes back and forth between the feeling side of their brain and the vocabulary. So men can either feel or talk. This is a critical thing because a lot of times the feminine, now see, here's the feminine brain. It has got like a superhighway between the two sides of the brain. Now, I'd love to get in and find the original research on this, but it makes so much sense. I notice for myself when I get into my feelings, especially when I'm triggered and I'm way down, in that fight, flight, freeze mode, I can be feeling something, but I have a hard time talking about it. I may be able to talk about it later. My partner, she can feel and she can talk and talk and talk and feel and feel. So be gentle with the masculine and help guide us when we're in our feelings to be able to give us the vocabulary. Is that making sense? I just want to make sure before I move on that you're getting this, because down here, when we're in our hurt, even when we're in our heart, sometimes we have a hard time with the vocabulary to be able to communicate what's alive in us, what's important to us. So here's a critical sentence. If you want to get somebody from their hurt to their heart, if they're triggered, oh, Lillian, yes, I wish I knew this 20 years ago. You know what? A lot of this I do too. I went through one divorce, 4 broken engagements, which is embarrassing because I'm a relationship coach. But they say you teach what you need to learn. And for years, I thought of that as sort of an insult. And now I realize, why would you want to teach something you don't want to learn, that doesn't fascinate you? Arnold is saying talk, feel, or talk. That's a very true thing, because most men I know, including myself, almost always approach a situation with no emotion, but with a way to solve the problem. So we can either feel it or fix it. And okay, here is the way. This is a magic sentence. So if you're ready for a magic sentence, here we go. If you want to get somebody from their hurt to their heart. Well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what to do that will guarantee the total opposite. Okay, I need you to play along with me because I can see you out there. So put your hands together like this. Even if you're on a cell phone, watch closely. Put your hands together like this. When I say go, what I want you to do is push really hard with your right hand. You ready? Get set, go. Push. No, push harder, push harder, push harder. All right, stop. Don't move your hands. Most of you, your hands are in the exact same place because as soon as I said push really hard with your right hand, what did your left hand do? It pushed back. As soon as there's force, we get resistance. So in a lot of communication in relationships, if somebody feels like they're being pushed, they push back. So if somebody is hurting and they're scared and we tell them you shouldn't be scared, you shouldn't feel that way, what do? They feel that way even more. So what I'm going to do is show you how to lean in so that they feel heard, understood, and valued. Write that down. Heard, understood, and valued. That's what we all want when we're communicating. Whether we're a little kid or your parents or your partner or yourself, what do I want? I want to be heard, understood, and valued. And if I'm scared and my partner tells me I shouldn't be scared or is trying to use their logic to like say that's not logical, all of those things just make it worse, push me away because I go, they don't understand me. They don't get me. So the idea here to get somebody to go from hurt back to their heart is asking this simple question. Does it always work? No, but it's the most effective question I've ever seen for this. Whoops. Sorry. Here we go. What do you What do you need to feel safe right now? What do you need to feel safe right now? Because here's the message that comes through when you ask that question. What do you need to feel safe? What message that comes through is whatever's going on with you right now is more important than anything I was going to say, anything I was going to do. What's really important right now is how you feel. That is critical. What do you need to feel safe right now? Now, it might take them a little bit to even let that register, but see what happens as soon as that registers, they have to move from being in their hurt, right there, in their hurt, to moving up into their feelings, their emotions, and into their heart. And this, what it lets them know is your feelings are a priority to me. And see what makes it safe for someone to lean in. And if they think that they're the only ones who are taking care of their feelings, you're not their ally. When you ask that question, you become their ally. What you're telling them is their feelings matter to you. What's going on in your heart matters to me. Now, a lot of times, especially in my family, because we really valued smarts, we tried to outsmart them and tell them that it wasn't logical. They shouldn't feel the way they feel. And the more that we did that, the more resistance it created. So what I'm trying to do is let you know how to get out of this hole down here. The other thing that's really critical, let me see, I'm going to erase some of this stuff, get it off the page. All right. What we want to do is, if we feel that the elevator right here, this elevator of our relationship is starting to head down, we want to catch it as soon as we can and get off. And what happens is we have patterns. And patterns, these patterns do one of two things. They either sabotage or support. And I'll give you an example, and it'd be fun for you to look at your own patterns and to catch them early. I was talking to my beloved the other day, and it's like we got into the one of the sabotaging patterns, which is you started. Yeah. Now, when somebody says you started it, what do you normally say? No, you started it. And where does this end up? It ends up in a downward spiral to somebody sleeping on the couch. So what happens is, if you start to recognize it in advance and go, oh, we're in the you started it pattern, because here's the key. If you get nothing else from this talk, this is the key. And hopefully someone will type in what they get from this right now. But in an upset, you have one of two choices. It's either me and you versus my old patterns, or me and my patterns versus, whoops. I will give you an example of this. It's me and you versus my old patterns, or me and my patterns versus you. My ex-fiance's sister's husband was, people asked me if I would talk to him, and he was an alcoholic, a very heavily practicing, doing lots of damage alcoholic who was super smart. And in my conversation with him, he basically said to me, do you think you're smarter than I am and you can make me give up my alcohol? So he was where? He was down here, me and my patterns versus you. And I instantly recognized that pattern. And what do you think my response is? No way. I'm not even going to take it on. If you want to keep your pattern, keep your pattern. And he did. And it destroyed him. And it drove his family away from him, including his kids. But he kept his pattern. And so anytime I'm helping a couple have a breakthrough in a relationship, number one, it's to start identifying the pattern. Which ones support you? Which ones, whoops, sorry, I said that wrong. Which ones sabotage you? And how to stop doing damage. And how to support you. And I am looking at this, and yes, if you want to get coached by me, definitely get a hold of me. or there's a whole group of people I work with from Love Coach Academy. You can find one of them. Scott Katamas is amazing. Or go get the book, start there, read the book. Start identifying the patterns and make it a game with your partner. Make a list. I made a list of about 10 major patterns that suck me out of being a great person and bring me back into my reptile brain. So hopefully this is connecting with you. This is a critical question. Do you want it to be, me and you versus my old patterns? Or do you want it to be me and my patterns versus you? So you can think about that, but that's what happens in relationships. And the idea here, when I brought it in this picture, is we're in this elevator right here. And what's happening is we're either going up towards the penthouse, which is full of possibility and love and options and connection and intimacy, or we are headed for the basement. And once we're in the basement, we have three options. Whoops. What are those three options? I'd love for somebody to type in. I've been talking about them. I want to make sure that somebody got those three options. And by the way, some of this is getting shared in a lot of different places, so I can only see some of the comments. If I can't see your comments now, I will go and, well, I'll look and see if I can see them on some of the other areas that have been shared, and I will get back to you. Also, if you've got questions, you can private message me on my webpage or at Argue Less, Love More. You can get over there and send me a message and get a hold of me. You can sign up for a free 15 to 20 minute complimentary conversation. Get clear on where you are, where you want to go, what's getting in the way, what's doing damage to your relationship, what trips you up, triggers you, and puts you back into that reptile brain. So that's something that's really critical. So how do we stay out of the basement? What are the three options when we're down in the basement? I've said it a couple of times today: fight, flight, freeze. These are all trauma responses. And when we're in the basement, we're in trauma. It's a reptile part of the brain, and it's an important part of the brain. It doesn't allow for distinctions. It doesn't allow for subtleties. It's either enemy, ally, black, white. It's this, that. It doesn't have a lot of distinctions in there. And the whole job here is to start identifying the patterns that are sabotaging you and the ones that are supporting you, and catch them early before you've made it all the way to the basement. It's like, start to catch them a sentence or two into it. Oh, this is the pattern that we do, which is whose fault is it? We're going for the whose fault pattern, or the right wrong pattern. Any pattern that pushes your partner away, makes them bad, stupid, and wrong, or makes you bad, stupid, and wrong, those are patterns that create separation and sabotage it. And it's comfortable. The thing about patterns is they're comfortable. Interrupting the patterns is uncomfortable. The idea here, these are comfortable. Look at our politicians right now. Our politicians are either collapsing or getting combative. It's only a few politicians, and I'll leave it up to you to decide, are being courageous, coming from their heart. This is Over here, win, lose. I don't care who loses as long as I win. Now, that sucks to be in a relationship with someone who plays like that. That was my brother. It was life or death. He had to win, and I had to lose. So I was kind of stuck over here at this other part, which is, whoops, sorry, lose, win. Ah. Now, you can do that occasionally in relationships, and it's okay. But if you do that a lot in relationships, you're going to end up building up resistance, resentment, regret. Relationships going to fall apart. Up here, this courageous one is where it's win-win. You don't want to win at the expense of your partner, at the expense of your children, at anybody's expense. It's like, how do we lift everybody up in this relationship? And this works whether you're dealing with roommates, with yourself. This is so important. I once said, if you want to be successful, you learn how to communicate with other people. If you want to be happy, you learn how to communicate with yourself. And if you want to have a great relationship, you learn both of those. My brother, my older brother, the one who traumatized the hell out of me, he was not just traumatizing me, he traumatized himself. And I think it was age 26, ended up committing suicide. He was an amazing human being in a lot of ways. He was incredibly charismatic. He was a race car driver. Women loved him. He was handsome. He was like James Dean. He was great at communicating to others. I'm guessing he sucked at how he communicated with himself. And in the end, it took his life. So we want to learn how to be courageous communicators, especially in our relationships, and learn how to come from the heart. Learn how to be voluntarily vulnerable. Brene Brown talks about it in her TED Talk. And if you haven't listened to Brene Brown, just go to YouTube, TED Talk, Brene Brown. Critical stuff for relationships. Start there. Watch it with your partner. Learn that courage, the other thing up here, compassion, all of it is built on vulnerability. And me spelling in public is me being incredibly vulnerable, because I know I'm spelling a lot of these differently. All right, I'm going to start at some levels wrapping it up. I would love to know what you've gotten from this, from our time together. A lot of what I've said today is not obvious and it's not easy. So if you want to get in shape, I'm going to tell you the 3 things to get in shape, and then I'm going to tie it back into what I was just talking about. 3 things to get in shape: eat better, eat less, exercise more. Eat better, eat less, exercise more. Hi, Angela. It's all recorded. You can come back and watch the whole thing. It's amazing. All right. That's very simple. How come so many Americans and people around the world are out of shape? It's not easy. It's the same thing in relationships. There are relationships, having a great relationship, it's almost simple. Communicate better, understand your needs and your partner's needs, and stop doing sabotaging habits, patterns, and beliefs. Simple, not easy. So what we're trying to do here is identify our habits, patterns, and beliefs and start eliminating the ones that get in the way. Start changing things. And to do that, it's critical to have a mirror. Like if you want to go put your makeup on or shave or, all the rest of it, it's important to have a mirror because you can't see yourself without it. It's the same thing in relationships. Without a mirror, you can't see yourself. So get a relationship coach. Get somebody who can help you see the habits, patterns, and beliefs. And if you think it's all about your partner, that's not going to help. The more, well, I was teaching, I was a consultant for the city of Albuquerque for years because before I got into coaching couples, I traveled around the world as a business consultant and problem solver. If a government city had a problem, they would bring me in. Oh my God. By the way, I just have to do this. This is like a total distraction. But my puppy here has decided that he wanted to come say hi because as soon as I'm online, somehow he knows and he's like trying to crawl up into my lap and talk to me. Anyway, if a city had a problem, they would hire me to come in if they couldn't figure out how to deal with it. I worked with industries. I worked in Hawaii, Hong Kong, Alaska, around the US. I was a professional problem solver. When I work with couples, I am a professional problem solver. I teach people how to communicate so they can come back together, so they can start supporting each other and stop sabotaging each other. Oh, okay. Sorry, buddy. Sit down. Thank you. So there you go. If you think that's something you'd like to learn, I've been studying it for 25 years. It's not that easy. I have clients that are rocket scientists. It goes against what we normally instinctively think about. And it's critical for you to have these skills if you want to have a great relationship, even a good relationship. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your feedback. If you are curious and want to schedule something, you can go here, sign up, spend 15 minutes with me, do a deep dive. And what will happen in that 15 minutes, you'll get to decide whether or not you think it'd be a good thing to work with me. And I get to decide whether or not it seems like it will be fun to work with you. Because I have an incredible success ratio. And part of it is because I work with clients who are committed to having a breakthrough. If you're not committed to having a breakthrough, I'd rather go ride my mountain bike. I'd rather go do something else in life than be with someone who's not interested in being there. And I can work with couples. I can work with individuals that are in a relationship, but their partner doesn't want to do it. It's not as much fun, but it still has an impact. It only takes one person to change in a relationship to transform the relationship. So thank you so much for your time, energy. I hope that you're safe right now. I hope that you're healthy. I hope that you're well. And I also know that this is important information, and you may have to watch this a couple of times to get everything from it. I have watched a lot of videos 4 and 5 times to keep harvesting another layer out of it. So it would be a great gift to me if you type in, and some people have already done it, what did you get? What specifically did you get from our time together, and what are you going to do with it? So that would be helpful to me because I want to make sure that I'm reaching out and giving you what you want and need. So thank you very much. Have an awesome day. I will see you next Thursday. Ciao.